Hi, and welcome to a Sense of Wellness podcast, inspiring and empowering a healthier you. I'm your host, Susan Greeley, and I'll be diving deeper into the 4 pillars of wellness: sleep, exercise, nutrition, and stress management. For February, which is National Heart Month, I'm talking about diet, nutrition science, and cooking fabulous foods to bring ease and joy into your life. I have a very special guest with me today. She is my dear friend and colleague, Amy Myrdal Miller. I've known Amy for nearly 30 years when we met at our orientation for the Nutrition Communication graduate program at Tufts University. So Amy is a highly regarded and award-winning registered dietitian nutritionist. She's the president of her own company called Farmer's Daughter Consulting, and she's the co-author of Cooking a la Heart, which was published last year in February of 2023. Amy is also the only person I know with a Valentine's Day birthday. So welcome, Amy. I am so happy to have you with me.
Susan, it is so fun for me to be here with you today. And yeah, can you believe we've been friends for nearly 30 years?
Goes by in a flash. It's a little crazy, but Amy is one of my favorite people. So thank you again for being here. And we're talking about our favorite things together. So life is good. We get to talk about nutrition science combined with our love of food and cooking and truly helping others live happier, healthier lives. So Amy, I'm going to start by sharing your lovely dedication in this book, Cooking a la Heart. I love your book. And I'm not just saying this because Amy is my friend. I absolutely love her book. And I have something I'll bring up during our podcast recording now that is a testament to that. So in any case, for all of our listeners, Amy's dedication says that this book is dedicated to those seeking a more healthful lifestyle. Cooking a la Heart is about the joyful, mindful pursuit of great food enjoyed with people you love in settings that relax and inspire you to do more good things for your health. So that alone, that's only half of the dedication. To me, that sums up so much, Amy. So I want to talk about that lifestyle-focused main point of your dedications. The joyful, mindful pursuit of great food. Why was it so important for you to include that in your dedication?
You know, Susan, as you were starting your intro, something really profound struck me, and I can't believe I didn't realize it until this very moment today. Cooking a la Heart was published on February 7th, 2023. February 7th is the anniversary of the day I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes.
Wow.
Yeah, that's crazy how the universe delivered the gift of this book on that anniversary, but I didn't realize it last year. So anyway, very shortly, I will be celebrating, and I really honestly mean celebrating, my 45th anniversary of living with type 1 diabetes, because it led me down this path of appreciating why the joyful, mindful pursuit of great food and better sleep and regular activity and stress management is so incredibly important to my wellness as someone with type 1 diabetes, and is so important for everybody striving for better health, better physical health, better mental health. So when my co-author Linda and I went back and forth on ideas for that dedication, it was something we both agreed upon, that you should do this because it's good for you. You should do this because it brings you joy, because it can bring you moments of peace and gratitude for an aroma or a flavor or a sip or a bite that you want again and again because it is so freaking delicious.
We are so similar. I absolutely love that. So a couple of things there. Amy has lived with type 1 diabetes for most of her life. And you're such a model and a role model is what I meant to say, Amy, for so many people. And as dietitians, it isn't just about telling people what to eat and that it's good for you. It's living this for these, we all have our stories and different reasons. And I think it's so important to share that with listeners. It's imperative that you eat well on a daily basis and live a healthy lifestyle to live longer. We both talked about this past year, like how our goals for our own personal lives and longevity. And we have some pretty awesome long-term goals, don't we? To live healthier, happier lives.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of my bucket list items is to have a 50th wedding anniversary with my darling husband, Scott. And we got married in our mid-30s. So that means I need to be a nice wife for quite a long time. And I need to maintain my health so I can be around in my mid-80s to celebrate a 50th wedding anniversary. And that's probably the most powerful motivator I have for every day taking care of myself, taking care of my diabetes, being mindful about everything that goes into my wellness.
It is powerful, and we want to be powerful motivators. We want to empower listeners, Amy, and that's exactly why we're here talking about this. Your book is focused on cardiovascular wellness. It's still the number one killer of American men and women, and it's so important. I want to hear from you. Why is this so important? Books like yours helping people.
There are endless reasons. So here's what I've heard from people. I don't really need another cookbook. I can get whatever recipe I want on the internet. Sure, you can get lots of recipes on the internet, but Cooking a la Heart is based on the science about eating patterns that will bring you better health outcomes. And when I say eating patterns, I mean, what are the foods that you're eating most of the time? This isn't about perfection. This isn't about restriction. This is about enjoying really great foods, making a few more mindful decisions about ingredients, portion sizes, proportions within a recipe. And Linda and I created a book that guides you through it. It gives you, confidence and competence in your home kitchen to make better choices, to prepare something maybe you've never prepared before. We start out the book, the first chapter is what I call Science Light. It talks about these massive research studies done all over the world with large groups of people as well as small controlled studies that, give us indicators of what are these patterns of eating that are going to bring about better health outcomes when it comes to cardiovascular wellness. Then the second chapter, which was so much fun for me to write, is how do you do this? How do you do this in your home kitchen? I went through a lot of myth busting in that second chapter too about the questions that we, as registered dietitians have been getting our entire careers. And as we get more and more science to show us things like eggs are great for you. And there's many reasons for that. Eat the yolk. There's especially important nutrients like choline in the yolk. I mean, that's just one example of kind of the myth busting that we did. And then the 18 recipe chapters that are broken down into things like sauces, salsas, aiolis. Why are those important? Well, because they bring about flavor, texture, aroma, color, moisture, things that make other foods that promote better health more delicious. So the book was really thoughtfully done, and it was meant to be a tool to guide people along, not just a one-timer, pick out a recipe and bring it to a party and move on with your life. This is kind of a guidebook for how do you do this? How do you adopt these better eating patterns so that you have a more mindful, joyful pursuit towards better health?
That's right. And most people we talk to on a daily basis still need those tools. They need the help. They're still mystified by how do they reach that? How do they eat healthfully on a daily basis and sift through the misinformation, the myths? I love the myth busting. So I'm just going to reiterate the book. Life is not about perfection. Food, diet, nutrition is not about perfection and deprivation. And you and I are very aligned. So as I'm reading through your book, I'm like, yes, the world needs this. I couldn't have said any of it better. And I just really love how simply it is laid out. So for listeners, there's so much to be said for the principles that Amy's talking about. So there's 5 major principles guiding the book and the eating patterns you discuss, but then diving into the how and the tools and what do I do to make my food taste good on a daily basis and get inspired to cook. And I know you and I both love to cook, but not everybody does. So it's important to give people the tools to make it easier. That said, you have these 10 culinary nutrition principles in the book, focus on 4 categories specifically. I want to talk about those. Number 1 is the focus on flavor. So what do people do to bring more flavor to their foods? Because everybody out there thinks healthy cooking is boring and tasteless.
Well, let's talk about the importance of flavor. The reason that we as humans, for the most part, eat the foods that we do is because we like what they taste like. We like the flavor. And so when you're focused on flavor, you're focused on things like using spices and herbs. You're focused on things like using those sauces, aiolis, and whatnot. But a big point that Linda and I made was focus on the amount of salt that you're using. Focus on your sodium intake. When we're talking about cardiovascular wellness, sodium intake is something that is critically important to pay attention to. As we age, our arteries get a little stiffer, which means it's a little harder to pump blood through our bodies, which means blood pressure naturally goes up. While not everybody is sensitive to salt in the diet or sodium, we all are aging and we all tend to have these increases in blood pressure. And the best tip I can share for being mindful about your salt intake is to use a product called Diamond Crystal Kosher Salt. People ask me if I'm a spokesperson for this brand. I'm not. I'm just the biggest fan. This is a salt that's been around since the late 1800s. And what's magical about it is the crystalline structure. So if you make a really tight fist, that's what most sodium chloride or salt crystals are like. Diamond Crystal is like the cotton candy of the salt world. It's these big, fluffy, hollow in the center crystals. So when you measure a teaspoon of that fine grained table salt, it weighs 6 grams. If you measure a teaspoon of Diamond Crystal Kosher Salt, it weighs 2.6 grams. It weighs 60% less, which means it has 60% less sodium, but you can use it the exact same way you use other salts. And it's an easy way for a home cook to start reducing sodium intake. We had one chapter in the book on pizzas and flatbreads and piadines, where every single recipe calls out that salt in it, the Diamond Crystal Kosher Salt, because pizza is one of those foods where you can start adding a lot of sodium intensive ingredients. And so we wanted really to call out that one strategy or that one ingredient in that chapter. But it's the salt that I use every day in my kitchen, that Linda uses, that's used in professional kitchens all over the world today. And yeah, go Diamond Crystal Kosher Salt for the win.
You took me back, Amy. I actually did a dietetic rotation at Diamond Crystal during my internship. I kid you not. All right.
Oh, wow.
I did that funny.
Gosh, that was so cool.
30 some years later. So that said, there's such emphasis on lowering sodium intake in our diet. It's the most important thing. I agree with you for cardiovascular health to lower sodium, not reduce fat necessarily and not, cut things out, cut this out, but becoming very aware of sodium and lowering sodium in the American diet. That's a number one priority. And I love how you describe it. So listeners need to be conscious about the amount of sodium they use at home. But I also just want to piggyback on that and lowering sodium and eating more at home, cooking your meals more, eating out less equates to a lower sodium intake in general. And then using the right type of herbs, spices, seasonings, and the right type of salt. That was awesome.
Yeah. But I'll say something here. Like, I think that I worked for a long time on behalf of the restaurant industry. I worked for the Culinary Institute of America, and I did continuing education programming for chefs and other leaders within very large restaurant chains, food service operations. I'm never the dietitian that's going to tell you don't eat out at restaurants for this reason or that reason. I'm going to say be a little more mindful. If you love fried chicken, I love fried chicken. Maybe think about how much and how often. We put chicken wing recipes in this book, which startles a lot of people, but we put them in there because I love them and I wanted to find a way to make them something that everybody could feel good about. One of my favorite lines in the whole book is, it was almost like a whisper in the recipe head note for one of our chicken wing recipes. It's okay. We love chicken wings too. So, it's about how much, how often, and the chicken wings in our book are made with a seasoning blend that doesn't have the coating, doesn't have excess sodium in it. But going back to, eating at restaurants, okay, I'm a lucky Californian. We were the very first state that had mandated nutrition labeling on restaurant menus. So here in California, as well as across the nation, if a chain has more than 50 restaurants of the same brand name in it, they have to declare the nutrition information. So you can look and you can see, oh, hey, this salad has this many milligrams of sodium, whereas this entree, wow, it has less sodium than the salad I thought was the quote unquote better for me option. So you can be an informed person eating out at restaurants and having that convenience and enjoyment. You can also be the home cook that, I'm never going to roast a whole chicken, but I'm going to buy a rotisserie chicken and I'm going to know that it's always juicy because rotisserie chickens get pumped with a solution that contains some sodium. But then you're going to say, you know what, but I'm going to use that rotisserie chicken along with a lot of vegetables and some legumes and I'm going to make a balanced meal that uses a convenience product, and I'm going to feel good about it because I'm doing things that are good for my stress level, doing things good for my nutrient intake. So.
And it brings the balance. It's easy to balance that out. I love that. That's a great tip. We don't want to impart any guilt, like, oh, I'm guilty because I didn't roast the chicken. No, I think that's a wonderful tip, Amy. And that takes me to number 2. I'm still going through the 4 categories, right? Number 2 is prioritize plants. So let's say you get a rotisserie chicken. What else do I need to do in that meal?
Yeah. What are you craving? Are you craving like a burrito and you want a chicken burrito? I think that's one of the recipes in the book that Linda came up with. How do you take pre-cooked chicken, some beans that you can drain and rinse, a can of beans. You don't have to cook them from scratch, although we teach you how to do that in the book. You can put in some salsa, and there you've got the great protein from the chicken. You've got plant-based proteins from the beans. You've got all that fiber and potassium. You've got some salsa. You put in a little cheese, and all of a sudden you've got a great burrito. Or you've got that roasted chicken and you want to put it on a salad. And, so just going back to prioritizing plants. This isn't about eliminating animal products and animal protein. It's putting more of an emphasis on fruits, vegetables, beans, legumes, eating more hummus as a snack item, snacking on nuts more often than other things. There's so many ways that you can add plants into your diet that are going to give you more colors, aromas, textures, flavors, fun snacking opportunities. I think we dietitians, I think everybody knows that we're so crazy wild about getting people to eat more fruits and vegetables. And it's because we love them. And we also know that very few people, it's less than 1 out of 10, are eating the recommended amount. So every single opportunity to eat more fruits and vegetables, go for it. Go for it, go for it, go for it. And Linda and I, in every recipe we created, we're like, well, can we add in a little more of this, a little more of that? You won't see a single recipe in the book that calls for something dumb like half an onion. Use the whole onion. In a savory recipe, it does not matter. Use the biggest onion you can find. Use 2 onions.
Of course. Exactly. Who would slice it in half and save it? No, eat the whole thing. I agree. And how do you get in more? And that's exactly what I do and teach people too. The chicken's fine. It's great. But typically plates are lacking more of the good stuff. This book teaches you and I both love to talk about it. I'll call us both phytonutrient nerds. We are,
Yes.
Get in more. And what's the simple message there? Eat more colorful whole plant foods. It really is important for cardiovascular disease, our health in general, but specifically cardiovascular disease. All the studies, as you were talking about the population studies, epidemiological studies, we don't have to go into all of them. We have so much science behind why your fruits and vegetables are that good for you. And they really are. And they're delicious.
Absolutely.
So you and I make them even more flavorful. But that takes me to number 3 about the powerful proteins. So talk a little bit, please, Amy, about both animal and plant proteins, because there's a lot of confusion out there. And I just want to hear your perspective on how to prioritize powerful proteins, period.
Yeah. So, the cookbook includes chapters on beans and other legumes. It includes chapters on chicken, beef, pork, lamb, a lot of seafood. There are powerful proteins within each of those categories, and they're powerful for different reasons. So when it comes to beef, I always talk to people about lean beef. If you like cooking with ground beef, and who doesn't, if you're a beef lover, it's easy, it's convenient, it's the least expensive form of beef. Choose lean beef. Look for 93% lean or more, higher number, 93, 95. You can even get it 97% lean in some supermarkets. Choose that lean beef. If you want to make a juicier hamburger patty with that, you can add some olive oil into the beef. Mix that in to get some of the fat. You're getting a better quality fat, a fat that's not going to increase your risk of heart disease. When we're talking about plant proteins, the beans, what do they provide? They provide protein, plant protein, but you're also getting fiber. And again, something else that most of us Americans don't get enough of. And you're getting potassium, which is the opposite of sodium. Potassium helps bring down blood pressure. Sodium tends to increase blood pressure. So some of these plants that we dietitians love so much, it's for so many reasons, plus the potassium that you can get. Other powerful proteins, dairy products are powerful proteins. Fluid milk, cottage cheese in particular is having this renaissance moment, is a really great protein option. I will tell you, when I have cottage cheese as part of my breakfast, I feel so satiated all morning long. And I have these comfort, memories from childhood of eating cottage cheese with canned fruit cocktail with my mom as a snack. Susan laughing on screen right now. It's darling seeing your reaction to that. But that's one of my comfort foods. Other powerful proteins, nuts are a great source of plant protein. And again, many of the nuts provide significant source of fiber. So there's lots of ways you can get protein. Eggs, man, I'm a huge fan of eggs. And I think eggs are a gateway to greater vegetable intake. So yeah, I could go on, but I'm sensing that maybe you want to move on to number 4, which is kind of a fun.
Well, 4 is awesome, and you're already relaying that through all of this, Amy, which is embrace enjoyment. And I love talking with you specifically about food because we are such foodies. And the way you describe it makes eggs like I'm excited to eat eggs, Amy. Truly. So let's talk about embracing enjoyment.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier in this interview that my birthday is Valentine's Day. And I remember, I was diagnosed a week before my 8th birthday. My first day back was Monday, February 15th. So the Valentine's celebration was on the 15th because, we weren't in school on Sunday. And my well-meaning 2nd grade teacher had white cupcakes with pink frosting and a talking heart. Those crunchy talking heart candies. She had one of those for every kid. And for me, she had grapefruit sections and Ritz crackers. Oh, I know your heart is breaking. My heart is breaking. My heart was broken that day because it signaled that Amy was different.
Like she took that enjoyment out of you in that moment.
She did what she thought was the best thing. So one of the most popular recipes in the cookbook is the a la carte olive oil brownies, which I made specifically for me as something I love because I love dark chocolate. I love walnuts. The brownies made with the olive oil. I feel so good when I'm cooking and baking with olive oil and has a little espresso powder in there. And that's an example of me having a chocolate treat that I can feel good about. In a small portion, I can manage the carbohydrates and still get a good blood sugar reading later in the day. There's, some photos of those brownies where they're cut out in a heart shape, which is especially sweet if you want to make them for your Valentine. But that's what I mean about embracing enjoyment. Neither Linda nor I are fans of embracing deprivation. We're about embracing enjoyment. This was really sweet. When the cookbook published, Linda sent me a publication present, and it was a box of Godiva chocolates.
Oh,
and those are chocolates to savor, right? Because they're so beautiful. And we have lots of dessert recipes in the book that also get you to think about savoring something like a piece of an almond orange cake with a little bit of ginger spiced with cream on top, because we all like things that are creamy, right? And when you put that dollop on top of that sliver of cake, it looks so beautiful. You're presented with something that's beautiful to the eyes, the aromas, the enjoyment, the mouthfeel. Okay, I'm having a moment, Susan.
Look at me. I'm like, you can't tell, Amy. My mouth is watering. To me, dessert has to either be fruit and cream or chocolate, and typically with nuts. So you just sit there I'm going to make your brownies. I'm going to make that orange olive oil, the cake. Yeah, those are favorites. They're favorites. Well,
you just said something that triggered a story that I wanted to share today, because it's important for me to recognize or to tell your listeners that Cooking a la Heart, this isn't the first edition. I was invited in to work with Linda Hackfeld on the 4th edition. This book's been around since the mid-1980s when it was first published as a gift for people participating in a National Institutes of Health research study. And then Linda's been like the godmother of this book through all 4 editions. But there's only one recipe that's been in all 4 editions, and it's a recipe called berries with cannoli cream.
Yeah.
It's mixed berries and ricotta with a little bit of powdered sugar to sweeten the ricotta, with shaved dark chocolate, some chopped pistachios, a little bit of orange zest. So you get those flavor elements that you get from like a really good cannoli, but you get all those berries with all their nutrients that are good for cardiovascular health, good for healthy aging. That's the recipe that has gone through all 4 editions because everybody loves it.
Oh my God. That's amazing. And for listeners, this book has 500 recipes. I wanted to say that too, Amy, because it's important to hear from the author or co-author. What are your favorite recipes? I'm going to ask you that in 1 second because I just want to reiterate there are 500. So I don't know if that's a really difficult question, but I'm thrilled to hear that there's one that is that consistent, the thread throughout all 4 editions, because I didn't realize there's 4 editions. So I'm seeking that one out. And for you, so what would you say it doesn't have to be 3, maybe 2, 3, 4. You've got to have some favorites in there.
Yeah, I do. And they change by the season. Like the recipe that I just made a few days ago was the chicken chili verde. It's like this light, herbaceous, brothy chicken chili with cannellini beans.
Okay. I stop you right there.
Yeah.
Didn't I text you and say, Amy, I'm making your chicken chili verde? I went through the book and said, what am I making? Did I text you that?
You did? You did?
Okay.
Yeah. No, you probably triggered me because we've been having a lot of cool, rainy days here in Northern California, and soup feels super comforting. But I love that soup so much. And it's one where you make it. Scott and I had it one night, and I've had it for lunch every day, for a few days because it reheats so well. That one's like a recipe that I wouldn't make it here in the summer in Sacramento. It's a little hard to eat soup when it's 115, but that's one I go back to time and time again. I've already talked about the a la heart olive oil brownies. Those I'll be making for my birthday in a few weeks. Gosh, what else do I love? Oh, the one that I get the most feedback on, and probably the one I'm most proud of just because it was this moment of inspiration when we were under pressure to create more recipes using chickpeas, are the Greek-inspired baked chickpeas with tomatoes and feta. Because it uses canned ingredients. So you got them on your shelf ready to go. You got canned chickpeas, canned diced tomatoes, a little bit of honey, a little lemon juice, oregano, some red chili flakes, a little honey, and whatever baking pan you're using, like a square 8-inch, 9-inch baking dish, put everything in there, stir it up, bake it off, top it off with the feta so the feta gets a little brown on top. And it's great as like a main meal. It's great as a side dish. It's great the next day. It's great at room temperature. It's great heated. And it's easy. And like when I talk about the recipe, almost everybody who has the book will open up and they'll be like, I can make that. That's easy. And that's key for, right? Like pursuing these things that bring us the joyful, mindful pursuit of better health, finding the easy things that are easy for you.
Mm-hmm. That's why I said that in my intro, bringing that ease. That's such a key word. When I say that, I feel better. Joy and ease. And we all need that. Amy, I'm making those chickpeas today because I haven't yet made them and I have all those ingredients. So that sounds...
And can I give you a little tip here?
Worse? I love your tip.
Yeah. So if you have a little whole grain bread and you have a little bit of that for sopping up the juices.
Oh, yeah. Do what we love talking. Let's just talk food. I cook all the time. Okay. I saved this to tell you during the recording of this podcast. That chicken chili verde. So for listeners, I think most people know I'm also a cookbook author. I have my cookbook it has a turkey chili. It's my boys' one of their favorite recipes. I make it and it's almost in their weekly repertoire and it's a favorite. However, it has just been moved from the place of favorite chili because yes, Amy, that chicken chili verde is now the top chili in my house.
Oh,
it was absolutely delicious. It was easy. It touched on everything. I couldn't even believe it. Was so sweet. My Liam, my youngest, that Amy knows, it is now he's asking for it again. Yeah, pretty incredible.
Oh my God. Okay, that's like, I've got tears in my eyes because that's just like such a great gift to hear that and to hear that your son loved it. When I was testing recipes, my husband had a lot of skepticism about a lot of recipes because when we first met, he grew up in Louisiana. If it wasn't made with a roux, like vegetables were unrecognizable. And he's now come a long way in his eating style and the eating patterns he maintains. But the chicken chili verde, he was like, that's not chili. And I'm like, there's lots of interpretations of chili. And he's like, you don't make chili with chicken, you make it with beef. And I'm like, but you can make it with chicken. He was very funny about it. And now every time I make it, he's excited about it. And he loves to eat it with tortilla chips. And yeah, he's very cute about having come around on that recipe.
It's awesome to see the influence and when you do witness that people make those changes and embrace it and love it, actually, and then love it is the goal. I put sliced avocado on top, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Leaves of fresh lime juice and avocado. It was to die for.
I think, you just touched on something that's really important because that recipe has the lime wedges, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of people have told me, oh, I didn't do that. I didn't think of I thought it was just like a garnish. But that bright acidity in a recipe like that has all those herbs, it really needs it. So Linda and I put stuff in recipes not to be annoying, not to make the ingredient list longer. We did it because our first principle, focus on flavor. That bright acidity really helps balance flavor, and citrus, especially limes and lemons, do that so beautifully across so many recipes.
And my excitement to try to not talk over you, Amy. Because you and I are the same in the cooking, and it's very consciously put in a recipe. There's a reason why a squeeze of lime juice or lemon juice, but it's more than that. I actually then squeezed the limes and put it into the bowl. So then I was kind of eating the limes within the chili.
Yeah, no, I get that. I just thought of another of my favorite recipes.
Okay.
It's the pumpkin butter, which is in the breakfast chapter. And it's like a recommendation for the whole wheat waffles as like a topping. But I'm pretty sure that pumpkin butter is as good on like an English muffin as it is on a spoon right out of the jar when you're standing in front of the fridge. Yes. That pumpkin butter, it's another like very few ingredients. And if you like, I'm going to say it, pumpkin spice, you like that pumpkin fall flavor, it's a super comforting thing to have on hand in your fridge, and you can keep it for a couple weeks. And it's something that you smear on toast or you put on crackers or you dip apples in. The one final one I'll tell you about is the ginger pear compote, which in and of itself is delicious. But if you like brie as like an appetizer and you're having some friends over, girlfriend wine hour or whatnot, or you got a book club, or you just like having happy hour with someone you love, having a little bit of brie with that ginger pear compote is another. Honestly, that's probably the recipe I've made the most. Yeah, it is, because I love it that much. I'm a huge fan of ginger anything, but that ginger pear compote is really, really, really good with brie.
I am too. So Amy and I post podcast recording or scheduling our next Zoom happy hours, and she's in California. I'm on the East Coast, and we're going to be making that together.
There you go, dear. I love it.
Awesome. Okay. All these incredible recipes, Amy, and all of this, you mentioned so many things, and I really think listeners are going to be blown away by the fact that you've mentioned, and we've mentioned, eggs, butter, cheese, and all of these delicious foods that people love. And rest assured, you can include them in your diet and still achieve heart health, a heart healthy diet.
Yeah. Let's talk about cheese for a moment. It's very important. I mean, we all love it, so that's important. It's a food that we love. But there was this massive study published last year in 2023, and it looked at people from 80 countries around the world of all socioeconomic levels, and it examined the eating patterns that were predictive of the best health outcomes, the least risk of cardiovascular disease. And it's no surprise it's people who eat the most fruits and vegetables, but it's also people who eat 2 servings of dairy a day, and that included 1.4 servings of full-fat dairy like cheese. So that study was predictive of full-fat dairy. We used to think that was like not the best idea for cardiovascular wellness, but full-fat dairy is now, it doesn't increase risk and or it may be protective. This is kind of the emerging research that's coming out. There's also research that shows people who eat more cheese have a slightly lower risk of type 2 diabetes. And why is that? Something that is higher in fat and good for you protein isn't giving you carbohydrate. And that carbohydrate is really what's problematic if you have pre-diabetes. So if cheese is taking the place of something,
pretzels.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great example. If you're choosing cheese instead of pretzels, that cheese is going to be more beneficial for you for a number of reasons. You're getting the protein, the calcium, etc. So for any of your listeners out there who are like, ooh, I shouldn't. Yes, you should. Enjoy the full fat yogurt. Enjoy that cheese. Enjoy, if you like whole milk cottage cheese, great source of protein, and there's just a little bit more fat there. If you're making the baked ricotta recipe from the cookbook, which is another super easy appetizer, buy the full fat ricotta. In the book, I will tell you something. I put in things like reduced fat ricotta. I put that in the ingredient list. Why? Because I was on Weight Watchers the whole time I was writing this cookbook. So I was manic about counting points, and it translated into a lot of the ingredient list, and so for a lot of people, calories are important too, right? So there's this balance between things you love, the portions that you need to feel satisfied, but also the calories that you're getting. So gosh, nutrition is so much fun, but there's so much nuance. But let me just say, Susan, as I know we're getting ready to kind of close all of this out, we made a dedication to our readers, but I really want to recognize the impact that my parents have had on my personal and professional being on this planet. My dad also had type 1 diabetes, and it's how he got out of serving in World War II. He got drafted and they realized this young man is too sick. They found out he had type 1 diabetes. He was a model for me of how to live well with diabetes if you have the right attitude about self-care. But sadly, he died of a massive heart attack when I was 29. And so cardiovascular wellness is a critical piece for me as someone with type 1 diabetes, as someone who lost my father from a massive heart attack, while ironically, I was working for a cardiologist in a research center. And then my mom recently passed away of Alzheimer's. So that piece of cardiovascular wellness and healthy aging of the brain are both really important to me as someone with their genes, but also to respect what they did to be good examples for me. My mom lived until she was 94, right? So amazing long life. And I feel really grateful that I had parents who helped me embrace having diabetes as a blessing for me. I found a career path I love. I found colleagues like you whom I adore. I've had so much fun doing this work, and I look forward to many more opportunities to inspire people through culinary nutrition.
Oh, Amy, you just made me so happy. That is why we're here, to inspire and empower. And you already answered the final question I ask of all my guests, which is, what is one thing you're grateful for today? So I want to hear even elaborate on opportunity to be grateful.
I think I'm really grateful that I have a husband who shares my goals for that 50th wedding anniversary celebration, shares in my diabetes care, takes such good care of me. I'm really lucky I have Scott Miller in my life, and I'm blessed to have him as my partner.
And I'm so blessed to have you as my friend and colleague, and to have you here today, Amy. This is wonderful. I don't want to stop, and I know that, we've been talking a long time and we can talk a long time. You've shared so many important tools and tips, and just keep doing what you do. And together, I know that we do help people live happier, healthier lives. They find the ease and the joy in their daily lives, right? And just go make one of these recipes. Go make those brownies for National Heart Month, everybody, because it's a fabulous, awesome book, Cooking a la Heart. Amy, where can they find it, and where can they find you in case anybody wanted to reach out to you directly?
So you can find Cooking a la Heart 4th edition everywhere books are sold. And you can find more information about me at farmersdaughterconsulting.com. I'm also on social media at a la Heart Amy, as in Cooking a la Heart. So a la Heart Amy on social media.
Perfect. Amy, thank you again. Happy birthday. Happy Valentine's Day. Happy National Heart Month.
Yeah. Happy National Heart Month, Susan. I love you too, dear.
Thank you. Thank you for taking time to join me and listen to this episode. You can find more information and subscribe to the Sense of Wellness podcast on our website at ccphp.net/sens. This show is brought to you by Castle Connolly Private Health Partners, a concierge medicine organization that partners with and supports exceptional physicians to deliver an unrivaled experience of comprehensive, collaborative, and attentive care for a preventative approach on health and optimal well-being for members. Be sure to listen in next time to the Sense of Wellness podcast, and remember, simple daily habits matter most.